This video is a fictional sci-fi story created for entertainment and storytelling purposes only. All characters, alien species, events, technologies, and scenarios are fictional. This content is not real news, official information, or scientific documentation.
The 9 alien ships arrived above Washington at 9:17 on a Tuesday morning and disabled every nuclear launch system on Earth before the president reached the Situation Room. They did not fire a weapon. They did not deploy troops. They simply reached through command networks designed to survive World War and placed 6,000 warheads into a condition military engineers had no name for. The missiles were not offline. They were refusing orders. 3 minutes later, satellites rotated away from military targets. Aircraft lost access to weapons control systems. Submarines discovered that their launch keys no longer completed their circuits. Then every screen on Earth displayed the same photograph. A reel-to-reel recorder sat on a metal table beneath a yellow bulb. Beside it stood a young American captain, one hand pressed against a bleeding shoulder. Behind him, partially hidden by canvas, were 3 figures who were not human. A handwritten label had been fixed to the recording reel. First contact. Sight lantern. July 18, 1955. A tall alien appeared in place of the photograph. 4 dark eyes formed a vertical line above a narrow mouth. He wore a black uniform marked with a broken white circle. People of Earth, I am Adjudicator Sarek Venn of the Aurelian Concord. His English was flawless, but the pauses between his words felt measured rather than natural. 71 years ago, the United States received a transmission from a refugee vessel carrying 184 citizens of Kestra. Your representatives recorded the communication, concealed the survivors, and denied that contact occurred. The photograph returned. The original recording contains a distress marker prohibited under Concord law. It also contains evidence connected to the destruction of an Aurelian evacuation vessel. That evidence has been missing for 71 years. A countdown replaced the image. 12 hours. If the United States returns the recording and identifies the location of the Kestran survivors, Earth will retain protected pre-contact status. If you refuse, this system will be placed under compulsory isolation. No vessel will leave your atmosphere. No transmission will pass beyond your moon. Recovery teams will search your world without the consent of its governments. Venn's lower pair of eyes narrowed. We do not ask whether America possesses the recording. We know it existed. We ask why you hid it, and what you believed was worth risking your entire species to protect. The broadcast ended. President Katherine Hale entered the White House Emergency Operations Center with 11 hours and 53 minutes remaining. She had spent 20 years as a federal prosecutor before entering politics. Her staff knew her as a woman who became quieter when everyone else became afraid. She looked around the table. Do we have the tape? Director of National Intelligence Robert Chen placed a red folder in front of her. The cover carried a classification marking that did not appear in any official security manual. Winter Cradle. Hale had seen the folder during her first week as president. Every commander-in-chief since Dwight Eisenhower had received the same briefing. She knew that a signal had been detected in 1955. She knew the government had hidden it at the request of its sender. She had not been told about survivors. She had not seen the photograph. The briefing said there was no physical contact, Hale said. That was the version authorized for presidents, Chen replied. Hale stared at him. There was a classified version of the classified version? Yes, Madam President. Who authorized that? A man who officially died in 1955. Chen opened the folder. The captain in the alien photograph was Thomas Mercer, a 31-year-old Air Force signals officer assigned to a listening station in West Virginia. He had recorded an extraterrestrial transmission on July 18, 1955. 6 hours later, he had been flown to Nevada when the vessel responsible for the signal entered Earth's atmosphere. His military record ended 6 weeks after the encounter. His grave in Maryland contained an empty coffin. Mercer's daughter is still alive, Chen said. She claims he died before she was born. His granddaughter works at the Smithsonian. What does she do? She restores damaged historical audio. Hale studied the photograph attached to the next page. Dr. Mara Mercer stood on a Greenland glacier wearing headphones over a winter hood. She was 38, an acoustic archaeologist specializing in recovering voices from damaged magnetic and mechanical recordings. Hale closed the folder. The granddaughter of the man who recorded First Contact has built her life around recovering lost voices. Apparently, that is not an accident. No, Madam President. How long until she gets here? Chen looked toward the door. Federal agents entered with Mara between them. She wore jeans, a dark jacket, and the expression of someone who had been taken from her laboratory without an explanation she considered adequate. President Hale, she said, your agents confiscated my phone, searched my mother's house, and brought me here in a helicopter. I hope the end of the world is at least relevant to my family. Hale turned the alien photograph toward her. Mara looked at Thomas Mercer. The anger left her face. I know that man. Chen leaned forward. You've seen the photograph? No, but I know his hands. She pointed to the captain's left hand. One finger was shorter than the others. My grandfather lost the end of that finger repairing a radio when he was 16. My mother said he died in an aircraft accident before she was born. His coffin was empty, Hale said. Mara did not respond immediately. Then she drew a small wooden box from her coat. My mother gave me this 10 minutes before your agents arrived. Her mother told her never to open it unless someone asked about Lantern. The box was no larger than a deck of cards. Its edges had been worn smooth by generations of handling. Inside, resting on faded blue cloth, were a brass key and a folded piece of paper. The paper contained only a date, July 18, 1955. Beneath it, in different handwriting, was a sentence. If they return, find the place where the sky could not see us. The countdown reached 11 hours and 38 minutes. President Hale looked at Mara. Can you find it? Mara picked up the brass key. My grandfather spent 43 years refusing to tell his family what happened. That does not answer my question. No, Mara said, but it tells me he wanted someone to keep looking. Thomas Mercer had built wooden boxes because he liked objects that admitted their purpose. A box held something. It did not claim to improve it, explain it, or make it less dangerous. It simply stood between what mattered and a world that might damage it. Mara had inherited 6 of his boxes. One held family photographs. Another contained his service medals. The smallest had remained locked in her mother's safe for 71 years. The brass key did not fit any lock in the White House. It did, however, contain information. Under magnification, narrow grooves along its shaft resolved into letters, numbers, and musical notes. The pattern was too precise to have been cut by human tools in 1955. Mara examined it inside the White House laboratory while military analysts searched national records for every facility associated with Thomas Mercer. The notes are a calibration sequence, she said, probably for playback speed. Chen stood beside her. Playback of what? A recording he expected us to find. The first line engraved into the key read, Bellwether Public Library, Lander, Wyoming. The library had closed in 1987. Its books had been transferred to a state archive. A military transport carried Mara, Chen, and 6 agents to Wyoming with 10 hours remaining. During the flight, Mara read the portion of Thomas's file presidents had never been shown. He had been stationed at a classified listening post known as the Bowl, a collection of radio antennas built into the mountains of West Virginia. Its mission was to intercept Soviet communications reflected through the ionosphere. At 2:47 on the morning of July 18th, Thomas detected a narrow-band signal aimed directly at his secondary receiver. The signal lasted 14 minutes and 31 seconds. Thomas recorded it on a backup reel-to-reel machine he had repaired himself. 6 hours later, radar tracked an unidentified craft over Nevada. The vessel transmitted the same signal and requested the presence of the human who had answered it. Thomas was flown to Site Lantern. The report ended there. His psychological evaluation remained attached. Captain Mercer exhibits an inflexible understanding of personal obligation. Once he gives his word, he interprets reconsideration as a failure of identity. "Stubborn," Mara said. "Pathologically so," Chen replied. "Governments call principles pathological when they become inconvenient." Chen closed the file. "Your grandfather helped conceal extraterrestrials from the government that employed him." "We don't know that yet. We know he faked his death. We know someone faked it. You want him to be innocent? I want him to be understandable. That is not the same thing." "No, it's harder." The Bellwether collection occupied 2 basement rooms beneath the Wyoming State Archives. Thomas's code led them to a 1948 guide to variable stars. The brass key opened a hidden compartment inside the book's spine. A magnetic reel lay wrapped in lead cloth. Beside it was a letter addressed to Thomas Mercer's daughter, Margaret. "I wanted to tell you every day. The reason I did not was not that I trusted a government more than I trusted you. It was because knowledge can become a sentence placed upon someone who never agreed to serve it. If the recording is needed, listen before you judge us." There were 2 tapes. The first explains what we promised. The second proves why the promise became necessary. Do not surrender either one until you know which history the visitors believe. "I am sorry I missed your life. Dad." Mara read the final line twice. Chen gave her several seconds before asking, "Where is the second tape?" "There's nothing else in the compartment." A handwritten note had been placed beneath the reel. "The witness is with the people we buried." Mara looked at the musical sequence engraved into the key. The reel could not be played safely on modern digital equipment. The signal included frequency structures that ordinary sampling would alter or remove. The Smithsonian sent a restored 1954 Ampex recorder to a secure Air Force facility outside Cheyenne. Engineers replaced its damaged capacitors, cleaned the playback head, and tested the motor with blank tape. Mara mounted the first contact reel herself. President Hale watched through a secure link from Washington. Sarek Venn had been offered access to the channel but had not answered. Mara inserted the brass key into a narrow slot hidden beneath the recorder's control plate. It fit. A second circuit awakened inside the 70-year-old machine. No American technician had installed it. Mara pressed play. Static filled the room. A low tone pulsed beneath it, repeating every 3 seconds. Then Thomas Mercer spoke. "This is Captain Thomas Mercer, United States Air Force, recording at Site Lantern, Nevada, July 18th, 1955. The time is approximately 0240 local." His voice was younger than Mara expected. "There are 184 survivors aboard the vessel, 23 adults, 161 children. Their environmental systems are failing." Another voice entered the recording. It was high, musical, and exhausted. "We are Tessari. Our home was Kestra. The Aurelian command calls us enemy succession lines. We call ourselves what remains. The speaker struggled with English, occasionally abandoning words for tones the recorder could not reproduce. Our civilization refused military integration. We mapped stars. We taught sciences. We built vessels for discovery. The Concorde judged these skills insufficient. Our worlds were taken. Those who resisted were killed. A child cried somewhere beyond the microphone. The Tessari continued. We did not choose Earth because you are strong. We chose you because you are outside their maps. We ask only that you know we existed. If we die, remember our names. If any survive, conceal them until the Aurelian government that hunted us no longer holds power. Thomas's voice followed. They want to know what happens if we refuse. There was a pause. Then destroy this recording. Forget our voice. Continue in safety. Thomas spoke to someone farther from the microphone. No, General, that wasn't permission to hand them over. A human voice demanded that he stop recording. Thomas did not. The Tessari speaker said, "The commander pursuing us will claim we destroyed an Aurelian evacuation vessel. She believes this. The event killed her family." "Did your people destroy it?" Thomas asked. "No." "Can you prove that?" "Yes. The Witness archive contains the final memories of those aboard." "Where is it?" "Inside a second recording." The tape shook as something struck the vessel. The Tessari speaker gasped. "They will hear us if the archive is played. They will follow its marker." Thomas answered, "Then we'll put it somewhere no one thinks to search. You do not understand what you risk." "I understand, children." The human general ordered Thomas to end the recording again. Thomas moved closer to the microphone. "If anyone hears this later, ask the Aurelians how many Kestran names are carved beneath their Hall of Union. Ask who commanded the weapons above Kestra. If they say the answers no longer matter, do not trust them." The child's crying stopped. Thomas's final words came softly. "No, we're not giving them back." The tape ended. For several seconds, only the recorder's empty spool moved. Then every alarm in the facility activated. Mara's playback had transmitted something. Sarek Venn appeared on the secure monitor. "You played the original." Chen stepped toward the camera. "How could you know?" The recording contains a Tessari distress marker. It was designed to wake their continuity arcs. President Hale's voice entered from Washington. "Why didn't you warn us?" "We did not know where the recording was." A second alien signal forced its way onto the channel. An older woman appeared. Fine golden implants crossed her pale face. Her uniform carried an unbroken white circle. Venn's posture tightened. "High Adjudicator Kalis." Kalis ignored him. "Humans of Earth, you have reactivated technology responsible for 19 million Aurelian deaths. Deliver the recording and the individual capable of decoding its witness archive." Mara faced the camera. There were children on that ship. Kestran warships responded to genetic command patterns, Kalis said. Every child was a potential key. "So you hunted them." "I ended a war." The anger in Kalis's voice was controlled, but it was not bureaucratic. She had lived with it for most of her life. "My mother and 2 brothers died aboard the evacuation vessel the Tessari destroyed. Your ancestor concealed their killers." Venn spoke carefully. "The cause of that vessel's destruction remains disputed. I was aboard it." Kalis's golden implants brightened. "I remember my mother holding my hand when the atmosphere escaped. I remember Kestran weapons around us." "Do not explain my dead to me, Sarek." She returned her attention to Mara. "Your grandfather made a decision without understanding its cost. You now have 10 hours to avoid repeating it." The transmission ended. Chen looked at the silent recorder. Where did Thomas hide 184 aliens? Mara unfolded his note. The witness is with the people we buried. She remembered something her grandmother had said whenever Mara asked where Thomas had gone. He lived where the sky couldn't find him. Mara opened a map. Not buried, she said. Underground. The search began with every underground installation expanded during the summer of 1955. Military bunkers produced hundreds of possibilities. Mines added thousands. Thomas had known that any official facility could be found through government records, so Mara looked for projects concealed behind ordinary businesses. Bellwether Library had hidden the first tape. A company named Bellwether Mining and Salt had purchased abandoned excavation rights outside Hutchinson, Kansas, in August 1955. Its ownership records led through agricultural cooperatives, church charities, and companies that had never filed a tax return. The mine had received no official cargo. Rail manifests recorded medical supplies, children's clothing, refrigeration systems, school books, and enough food to support 200 people. President Hale authorized an expedition. Sarek Venn requested permission to join. You threatened our planet 2 hours ago, Hale told him. The isolation order was intended to keep Kalis from entering your atmosphere. You might have mentioned that. The Concord does not announce internal division to uncontacted civilizations. We noticed the division when she threatened to execute refugee children. Your species also separates public policy from private disagreement. Not while hovering above another planet. Venn's upper eyes narrowed. I have studied your United Nations. Hale considered that. No weapons, she said. Venn looked almost offended. Madam President, I am the weapon you should be concerned about. That was not reassuring. It was not intended to be. His shuttle landed in Kansas with 8 hours remaining. Thousands of people gathered along nearby roads. Some carried cameras, others held American flags, signs supporting the Tassari, or rifles that would have been useless against the shuttle. Mara met Venn outside the sealed warehouse covering the mine entrance. He was taller than he appeared on screen. His uniform adjusted around his body like flexible armor. Beside him stood Deputy Ilya, a blue-gray Aurelian officer carrying a rectangular scientific instrument. Venn looked at the armed federal agents. Your president said I could not bring weapons. She didn't say we couldn't, Director Chen replied. That appears characteristic of your diplomacy. The brass key activated an elevator hidden behind a concrete wall. Mara, Chen, Venn, Ilya, and 4 agents descended 200 meters beneath Kansas. The air smelled of salt and old machinery. When the elevator reached the bottom, a speaker awakened. Thomas Mercer's voice filled the passage. If you came for the children, understand this, they are under the protection of the United States of America. Chen looked at Mara. Did the United States agree to that? Probably not when he recorded it. Lights illuminated one after another, revealing dates painted along the tunnel. August 1955, January 1962, March 1973, October 1987. Beside each date were names. Most were human. They reached a steel door marked with a broken circle. Venn touched the symbol. A Tassari mourning mark, he said. My family called it a compass. It represents a journey that cannot return to its beginning. Mara inserted the key. The door opened. Rows of glass chambers stretched through a cavern carved from ancient salt. Some resembled human hospital beds surrounded by improvised cables. Others looked like stone cradles. There were 184. Every chamber was empty. Chen searched the control station. No bodies, no remains. Deputy Ilya opened a storage room. Human clothes had been preserved inside. Shirts, dresses, winter coats, and children's shoes, all modified for bodies with different proportions. Drawings covered one wall. A farmhouse beneath two moons. A yellow school bus flying between stars. A Tassari child holding hands with a human girl. Mara found a picture of Thomas sitting beside a slender alien woman wrapped in a blanket. Someone had written on the back, Thomas and Sella. First snow, 1955. Nearby ledgers documented 32 years of life beneath Kansas. American doctors treated Tassari infections using experimental antibiotics. Farmers delivered food through church networks. Engineers repaired alien environmental equipment with tractor components. Teachers created lessons combining Kestrin mathematics, English, and American history. The participants were not intelligence officers. They were nurses, mechanics, librarians, clergy, miners, and families living above the salt. Some understood whom they were helping. Others had been told only that political refugees needed protection. All had accepted the same warning. Discovery might mean prison. None had exposed the mine. Chen opened a ledger from 1961. The Kennedy administration had discovered the operation. An authorization had been written across the first page. The presence of these individuals creates an extraordinary security risk. Returning children to execution is nevertheless incompatible with the principles we claim to defend. Operation Winter Cradle will continue. No Kestrin technology is to be removed without informed consent. Later presidents had renewed the order. Republicans and Democrats, wartime leaders and peacetime leaders. Men who disagreed about nearly every use of American power had signed the same instruction. They remain under our protection. Do not turn asylum into exploitation. The promise survives the administration. Venn read each line through Ilya's translator. For 71 years, he said. Not only presidents, Mara replied. She turned pages filled with names history had never recorded. A nurse stayed here during a measles outbreak. A farmer hid the emergency exit beneath his grain silo. A radio engineer maintained their communication system for 26 years. Why? Different reasons, probably. They received no technology. The ledgers record several offers. The caretakers refused anything that could be reproduced as a weapon. Venn's lower eyes closed. My people concluded no pre-contact civilization could possess Kestrin technology without exploiting it. Your people made the same mistake governments make here. What mistake? Assuming everyone wants what power wants. Ilya found a final ledger beneath the control console. Thomas had written the last entry. October 4th, 1987. Sela says the children can no longer remain physical. Their bodies have adapted better than expected, but Earth still harms them slowly. The continuity arcs can preserve neural patterns until open contact becomes possible. She thinks humans may never be ready. I told her readiness is a luxury. Decency is a decision. The transfer begins tomorrow. Beneath Thomas's entry, Sela had replied, Thomas mistakes delay for protection. We hide because Earth cannot defend us, not because hiding is noble. One day someone else will pay for our caution. Mara showed the exchange to Venn. What are continuity arcs? Kestran preservation vessels, he answered. A mind can exist within their memory architecture and later return to a biological body. The children are alive? Possibly. Where? Ilya activated the mind's remaining systems. A three-dimensional map of the solar system appeared. 184 faint points orbited the sun, disguised among asteroids, damaged satellites, and fragments of cometary debris. The mine had never been their burial place. It had been the station from which they entered the arcs. The first contact recording had awakened them. Every point began moving toward Earth. The first attack came from a human satellite. An American surveillance platform altered its orbit and accelerated toward the Kansas mine. Military commands failed to stop it. The alien restraint on Earth's weapons prevented missile interception. Impact was 14 minutes away. Kalis has control of it, Venn said. President Hale joined the mine's communication channel. I thought your technology controlled our satellites. It controls their ability to attack Concorde vessels, Venn replied. It does not prevent an authorized Aurelian tribunal from using them. You designed a system that can steal our weapons, but not protect us from your government? My ship was built according to legislation. Of course it was. Mara studied the first contact tape. The damaged section beneath Sella's voice contained two interwoven signals. One was the distress marker. The other matched the musical sequence carved into Thomas's brass key. What happens if we transmit them together? She asked. Venn examined the pattern. It is a Kestran defensive command. Can it redirect the satellite? It may also identify the arcs to Kalis. She already knows where the mine is. She does not yet control the arcs. The impact timer reached 9 minutes. Hale made the decision. Transmit it. Mara combined the signal and sent it through the mine's antenna. The satellite rotated 90 degrees and fired its maneuvering thrusters. It entered the atmosphere 4 kilometers north of the facility, scattering debris across empty fields. A second system activated beneath the mine. The points representing the arcs became brighter. Venn stared at Mara. Thomas divided command authority between the recording and the key. He didn't trust any single government to control it. He trusted his family. No. He trusted whoever understood why the recording was hidden. Chen's phone vibrated. He read the message and swore. Secretary of Defense Aaron Vale appeared on the central monitor. He was standing in the Pentagon Command Center, surrounded by military officers. Director Chen, Dr. Mercer, you will transfer all Kestran materials to Defense Department custody. President Hale's image appeared beside his. Secretary Vale has been relieved of authority. Ignore his order. Vale remained calm. High Adjudicator Kalis has offered Earth-protected membership in the Concorde. We receive defensive technology, medical access, and immunity from isolation. In exchange, we surrender the recordings and allow the Tessari survivors to face tribunal review. Execution, Mara said. Review. You don't believe that. Vale's expression tightened. I am responsible for 8 billion human lives. No, Hale said. You were responsible for one department until 30 seconds ago. The Constitution was not designed for extraterrestrial siege. It was designed for frightened men who believe emergencies make them kings. Vale did not raise his voice. This is arithmetic, Madam President. 184 non-human refugees against the survival of Earth. The moment you call living people arithmetic, you have already chosen the answer. The dead do not care whether history considers us decent. No, Hale replied, but the living have to inhabit what survives. Behind Mara, one of Chen's agents raised his weapon. The other 3 turned theirs on him. The senior agent carried a narrow transmitter linked to Vale's command network. He fired before Venn could move. 2 projectiles struck the alien adjudicator's chest and threw him into a salt pillar. Ilya disabled the agent, but another seized the recording and dragged Mara toward the mine console. Activate the arcs. I don't control them. You just moved a satellite. That is not the same system. Vale held up a second magnetic reel on the monitor. Chen stared at it. The Witness archive. My team recovered it from the Library of Congress 20 minutes ago, Vale said. Thomas Mercer deposited it there under the name John Mulligan. Mara understood the alias. Her grandmother had hated an old railway song because Thomas played it whenever he wanted everyone to leave the room. Vale had both recordings. He had allowed Mara to keep the first only long enough to locate the arcs. "Do not play the second tape," Ven warned from the floor. Blood darkened the edge of his armor. "Kalis requested proof of cooperation," Vale said. "The archive contains a neural marker," Ven replied. "Playing it will give her direct access to every Tasari memory system." Vale mounted the second reel on a Pentagon recorder. Mara stepped closer to the monitor. "You are not negotiating with Kalis. You are helping her destroy evidence that could expose her family. She wants the surviving Kestrans. She wants the truth buried with them." Vale pressed play. The witness tape produced no voice. It released a sequence of tones below human hearing. Golden light spread across the floor of the mine. The star map expanded until the solar system filled the cavern. The arcs altered course, not toward Earth, toward Kalis's approaching tribunal ships. Ven forced himself upright. "She has taken command." Vale's composure finally cracked. "That was not our agreement." Kalis entered the Pentagon transmission. "You have fulfilled the function for which you were useful." Her ships crossed lunar orbit. Vale looked at the countdown. 4 hours remained. "Release Earth's defense systems," he demanded. "You possess no defense capable of changing the outcome." "You promised protection. I promised evaluation." The channel closed. Vale stood motionless beside the recorder. For the first time, arithmetic had answered him. One arc resisted Kalis's control. It separated from the formation and descended over Kansas. The vessel landed in a wheat field above the mine. It resembled a smooth black stone no larger than a car. Rain touched its surface and became steam. Soldiers surrounded it under President Hale's authority. A seam opened. An elderly woman stepped onto Earth. She had silver hair, 2 dark eyes, and 6 long fingers on each hand. Translucent skin along her throat pulsed with every breath. She wore Thomas Mercer's Air Force jacket. Mara recognized her from the drawing. Sella Aaron. The woman studied her. "You carry Thomas around the eyes." "You knew my grandfather?" "I argued with him for 32 years. "Then you knew him well, better than either of us preferred." Ven emerged from the mine with Ilya supporting him. He lowered his head. "Speaker Aaron, the Concord recognizes your right to provisional sanctuary." Sella's expression hardened. "The Concord exterminated my world. The present government did not issue the order. You investigated the destruction of the evacuation ship. Ven did not deny it." "You declared the evidence inconclusive," Sella continued. "I did not have the witness archive. You had testimony. I had survivors whose memories my superiors dismissed as Kestran fabrication. You accepted that decision." "Yes." The answer carried no defense. Sela stepped closer to him. "You lacked courage." "I had courage," Ven said. "What I lacked was enough of it." The tribunal ships entered Earth orbit. Sela looked toward the sky, then acquire more quickly. They returned to the mine. Sela walked among the empty chambers, touching names written by children who had learned to live beneath Kansas. Mara followed her. "Why did Thomas hide the witness tape?" "Because I asked him to." "The archive could have proved your innocence. It also contained the identities of Aurelians who helped us escape. After 71 years, most of them would be dead. Their families were not. Kalis's mother was one of them." Sela stopped. Ven looked up sharply. The evacuation ship carried Aurelian civilians, Sela said. Kalis believes Kestran weapons destroyed it. The truth is more difficult. What happened? Mara asked. Kalis's mother, Nara, discovered the extermination order. She hid 90 Tessari children among Aurelian evacuees. Her husband commanded the tribunal fleet. Kalis's father? High Commander Horus Kalis. When he learned what Nara had done, he ordered the ship destroyed and blamed Tessari fighters. Ven closed all four eyes. You had the command signature. Nara transmitted her final memories to my vessel before the missile struck. And you concealed them. I protected Aurelian officers who were still rescuing our people. Their government would have executed their families. Horus died 40 years ago. By then, the Concord was rebuilding. Kalis had become High Adjudicator. Revealing that its celebrated founder had murdered his own family could have fractured hundreds of worlds. Mara remembered Sela's note in the ledger. One day someone else will pay for our caution. You chose stability, she said. Yes. So did my government. Yes. So did Ven. Sela looked at him. Yes. And now Kalis controls the arcs because everyone who knew the truth decided another year of silence was safer. Sela's throat pulsed rapidly. You sound like Thomas. He missed my mother's entire life for this secret. I have not decided whether that is a compliment. Mara opened his letter again. He had written that knowledge could become a sentence placed on someone who never agreed to serve it. Thomas had protected his daughter from the burden. He had also denied her the choice to share it. What will Kalis do with the arcs? Mara asked. Erase every Tessari mind, then she will destroy the Witness archive. She already has the tape. The tape contains encoded memory. It requires a Tessari consciousness to translate. That is why she wants you. Sela nodded. A warning sounded. 6 tribunal craft had entered the atmosphere. They were tracking her neural pattern. The mind's defenses could conceal her for minutes, not hours. Mara looked at the star map. Your pattern exists inside the arcs? Copies of it. Then broadcast it from all of them. Sela understood. 184 identical signatures appeared across the solar system. The tribunal craft divided formation, unable to identify which Sela was physical. It bought 23 minutes. Mara turned to Ven. If Kalis needs Sela to decode the archive, we give her Sela. Ilya stared at her. Speaker Aaron just returned to physical form. Not the real Sela. The arcs could generate a remote body using controlled gravity and projected matter. It would fool Kalis's sensors until she attempted a deep biological scan. Sela's projected body could reach the witness tape. Then it could decode the memories. Kalis will jam the transmission, Ven said. She'll jam technology she recognizes, Mara replied. What do you propose? Mara picked up Thomas's first reel. We send it the way he did. Across Earth, radio stations received instructions no broadcaster expected to hear. Preserve all analog equipment. Reconnect decommissioned transmitters. Prepare to carry a signal outside standard digital networks. Museum technicians warmed vacuum tubes that had not functioned in decades. Amateur operators connected homemade amplifiers to antennas built in garages. Abandoned coastal stations returned to life. University laboratories retrieved reel-to-reel machines from storage. The network had no central hub. Kalis could destroy a transmitter. She could not destroy millions of people willing to repeat what they heard. President Hale addressed the world. 71 years ago, a small group of Americans concealed first contact. They believed secrecy was necessary to protect refugees. That decision saved lives, but it also denied humanity knowledge that belonged to everyone. Today, the secret no longer protects the Tasari. It protects the people who hunted them. We will therefore release every authenticated record of Operation Winter Cradle. No nation will own this history. No government will decide alone what humanity is permitted to remember. The Winter Cradle ledgers entered the public record. People saw the names of nurses, farmers, teachers, mechanics, presidents, and children. They saw the drawings from the Kansas mine. They heard Thomas's recording. Outrage followed. So did pride. Scientists condemned the lost decades. Families of caretakers learned why parents and grandparents had disappeared for weeks at a time. Governments demanded access to information America had hidden. None of that stopped the radio network from growing. The conflict was no longer America's secret. Humanity had inherited it. Venn contacted Kalis. Speaker Sela Aaron will surrender in exchange for Earth's release from isolation. Kalis appeared on the mine's monitor. Why would she agree? Sela's projected body stood beside him. Because humans kept faith with us, the projection said. I will not repay them with extinction. Kalis watched her oldest enemy. You could have prevented this 71 years ago. So could your father. The golden implants in Kalis's face brightened. Send her alone. A tribunal shuttle collected the projection from an open field. The false Sela boarded Kalis's flagship, while the real one remained beneath Kansas, connected to the arcs. Secretary Vale stood inside the flagship's archive chamber. Kalis had brought him from the Pentagon with both tapes. He looked older than he had 2 hours earlier. The projected Sela approached him. You traded 184 lives for protection. I tried to save 8 billion. Fear makes clean equations from living people. I was wrong about Kalis. No, you were wrong about the kind of civilization that would remain after your bargain. Kalis entered with 6 guards. Decode the witness archive. Sela approached the second reel. It must be played on an analog machine. Vale had brought a restored military recorder from the Pentagon. He mounted the tape. The projected Sela placed one hand above the playback control. Kalis studied her. If the archive proves your claim, why hide it? Because truth can kill when released only as ammunition. You protected murderers. I protected those who disobeyed them. My mother died because of Tasari weapons. Your mother died saving Tasari children. Kalis struck her. Her hand passed through the projected face. The false body fractured into silver light. Alarms filled the flagship. Kalis reached for the recorder. The projection pressed play first. The witness archive entered Sela's mind beneath Kansas. She translated it into sound. Earth's analog transmitters carried the signal. For Aurelian minds, the recording became more than audio. They experienced the final minutes of the evacuation ship through Nara's senses. Kestra burned below. Aurelian vessels fired into cities marked for surrender. Tasari defense ships tried to guide civilian transports through the blockade. Nara stood on the bridge. 90 Tasari children were hidden among Aurelian families aboard her ship. Her sons knew. Her 8-year-old daughter Kalis did not. High Commander Horus Kalis appeared on the main display. You are carrying enemy succession lines, he said. I am carrying children, Nara replied. Their neural patterns can activate the continuity arcs. They are frightened. Some cannot speak. Turn them over. No. You condemn your family. Nara looked toward young Kalis. Then remember who condemned them. Aurelian fighters surrounded the evacuation vessel. Tasari pilots placed their ships between Nara and the tribunal fleet. They transmitted offers to surrender. Horus rejected them. His command signature armed the missile. Nara recorded the authorization, the weapon code, and her husband's voice. Then she sent the memory archive toward Sayla's escaping vessel. Her final sensation was Kalis's small hand inside hers. The missile struck. The transmission spread through the Concorde. Aurelian officers received it. Civilian relays copied it. Worlds that had spent generations honoring Horus Kalis as the founder of peace experienced what he had done to secure that peace. Kalis tore the tape from the recorder. The memory had already escaped. "You corrupted it," she said. The projected Sela reformed beside her. "No. Your father edited your grief. We returned what he removed." Kalis ordered her ships to fire on Earth. Only one obeyed immediately. The others hesitated while their crews processed Nara's final memory. The loyal tribunal vessel launched a kinetic projectile toward Kansas. Its impact would collapse the mine and destroy Sela's biological body. Ven moved the measure of law into its path. His ship intercepted the projectile above the Atlantic. The hull split along its center. Burning fragments crossed the sky. Ilya's voice reached the mine through static. "We have lost command control." Mara stared at the falling ship. "Where is Ven?" He remained on the bridge. "Why?" The interceptor required manual guidance. The measure of law vanished beneath cloud. Kalis's flagship descended toward North America. The Witness archive had taken her father from her. It had also destroyed the hatred she had used to survive her mother's death. She came toward Earth with nothing left except the authority to erase those responsible for the truth. Kalis regained control of 2 tribunal ships and shut down the analog transmitters she could locate. Thousands more continued broadcasting. She directed her flagship toward Kansas, its weapons charged. Sela maintained the mine's shield through her connection to the arcs, but Kalis still controlled most of their navigation. Every struggle between them damaged the mines stored inside. Mara watched the survival indicators fall. "How long?" 6 minutes, Sela said. "Possibly 8. Can we transfer you back to an arc?" "Not while I hold the shield." "Then release it. The first shot will destroy the mine." There has to be another control path. Thomas divided the command between the key and recording. Kalis possesses the tape. Mara looked at the wooden box she had carried from Washington. Thomas had made it to hold the brass key. Its purpose seemed simple. That did not mean it had only one. She removed the faded blue lining. A second strip of metallic foil had been concealed beneath it. Kestran symbols covered its surface. Sela read them. Shared command authorization. Thomas could control the arcs? He demanded a human override. Why? He said asylum without the means to defend us was a more comfortable prison. Can I use it? It requires his neural pattern. I'm related to him. Not closely enough. The mind shook as Kalis's first beam struck the shield. Empty chambers cracked. Drawings fell from the wall. Salt fractured above them. Mara pressed the foil against the console. The system scanned her. Access denied. She tried the brass key. Access denied. Another impact drove everyone to the floor. Mara remembered Thomas's evaluation. Once he gives his word, he interprets reconsideration as a failure of identity. The system was not looking only for biology. Thomas had wanted command to belong to someone who understood the decision. Mara placed both hands against the console. We're not giving them back. The symbols turned white. Access granted. 184 arcs transferred control to her. Mara felt the solar system as a field of movement and weight. She sensed each hidden vessel, each preserved mind, and Kalis's flagship descending through the atmosphere. There was not enough energy to protect the mine and restrain the ship. Sayla saw the calculations. You must choose. Mara released the shield. Kalis fired. Instead of stopping the beam, Mara redirected the ark's gravity fields around it. The particle stream curved across the sky and dispersed above the Pacific. Then she pulled on Kalis's flagship. The vessel stopped 19 kilometers above Kansas. Its engines fought the arcs. Kalis directed more power into propulsion. Mara moved the gravity field ahead of the ship, turning its own acceleration into pursuit. The flagship began rising. Kalis appeared on the mine's monitor. You cannot maintain this. No, Mara said, but I don't have to. The arcs dragged the flagship toward the moon. Its weapons consumed power trying to break free. Its engines overheated. The two remaining tribunal ships moved to assist, but their crews refused orders after receiving Nara's memory. Kalis abandoned strategy and fired directly at the arcs. 3 preservation vessels failed. The mines within them began collapsing. Sayla cried out. Mara released the flagship and diverted every arc into recovery formation around the damaged vessels. Their memory systems linked, distributing the injured Tessari consciousnesses across the fleet. Kalis regained control. Her ship turned toward Earth again. We cannot stop her twice, Sayla said. A transmission entered from inside the flagship. Secretary Vale appeared. Blood covered one side of his face. He had escaped Kalis's guards and reached the archive chamber. The first contact reel lay beside the ruined recorder. I can access the ship's communication system, he said. President Hale answered from Washington. Why should anyone trust you? You shouldn't. Vale picked up the tape. But I can still be useful. The recorder is destroyed, Mara said. The playback head is intact. She understood. Pull the tape across it manually. At what speed? 7.5 inches per second. Vale looked at the loose magnetic tape. You expect me to measure that by hand? Listen to Thomas. If he sounds normal, you're close. Vale connected the playback head to the flagship's emergency transmitter. He began pulling the tape. Thomas's voice emerged low and distorted. Vale moved faster. This is Captain Thomas Mercer, United States Air Force. The Kestrin command pulse reached the arcs. Mara regained full control. Kalis entered the chamber alone. She held a narrow weapon against Vale's chest. You betrayed your species twice today, she said. The first time was when I handed you refugees. You judged them expendable. Yes. Why should your people forgive you? They shouldn't. Vale kept pulling the tape. The arcs surrounded the flagship with synchronized gravity fields. Kalis pressed the weapon into his chest. You attempted to save Earth. I attempted to preserve our bodies by surrendering the reason we deserve to survive. Kalis fired. Vale fell beside the recorder. His hand remained wrapped around the tape. The command signal continued for 3 more seconds. It was enough. Mara locked Kalis's vessel above the lunar surface. Its engines shut down. Tribunal officers who had refused her orders entered the archive chamber and arrested her. The weapons aimed at Earth went dark. The alien countdown reached 0. No isolation order followed. The species enforcing it no longer agreed on whom the law was meant to protect. Sarek Venn was found alive inside the broken command section of the Measure of Law. Human rescue vessels reached him in the Atlantic. His injuries required an Aurelian medical system, but the equipment had survived aboard an escape craft. His first question concerned Sayla. His second concerned the Witness archive. His third was whether Earth had preserved a copy. Mara visited him 2 days later. We preserved several million, she said. Digital recordings, cassettes, vinyl, optical film, Someone carved the waveform into a wooden table. Ven opened his upper eyes. Why? He distrusts computers. Was his concern justified? No, but the table is beautiful. Ven's damaged throat forced him to breathe through a transparent membrane. Kalis will face trial. Under the same laws she used against us? The same legal system, not the same judges. That distinction matters less than you think. I am beginning to understand that. Sela entered. Ven tried to rise. Remain still, she said. You already performed your dramatic sacrifice. I delayed an overdue decision. You nearly died. That gave the decision useful emphasis. Sela studied him for several seconds. I misjudged you. No. You judged the officer who declared your evidence insufficient 63 years ago. And who are you now? A man attempting to deserve the inconvenience of survival. She extended her hand. Ven took it. Forgiveness did not pass between them. Too many people were dead for a gesture to repair the distance. But neither withdrew. Secretary Vale also survived. Aurelian surgeons removed the projectile from his chest, though nerve damage left his right arm unusable. He resigned before President Hale could dismiss him. At the first congressional hearing, he did not request immunity. I believed survival justified surrendering strangers, he testified. I discovered too late that a civilization is not merely the number of its living bodies. It is also the boundaries it refuses to cross. He accepted responsibility for the deaths and injuries caused by his actions. President Hale released the complete Winter Cradle archive. Some information concerning ARC vulnerabilities remained under Tessari control, not American classification. Every other document became public. The reaction was not unified. Scientists condemned the government for hiding proof of extraterrestrial life. Historians questioned the legality of 11 administrations maintaining a secret beyond congressional oversight. Families sued. Protests filled Washington. President Hale did not defend every decision. Some officials protected refugees, she told the nation. Others wanted alien technology. Some feared panic. Some feared losing power. Human motives are rarely pure enough for monuments. What matters is that when frightened survivors arrived carrying children, people chose not to return them to execution. That decision was right. The secrecy surrounding it eventually became dangerous. That must also be remembered. 3 weeks later, the Concord convened a new inquiry in the United Nations Assembly Hall. This time, Earth was not the accused. NARA's Witness archive played before representatives of 412 civilizations. Aurelian officers confirmed the command signature that destroyed the evacuation ship. Families of other victims demanded investigations into disappearances long attributed to Tessari attacks. Kalis attended under guard. She had not spoken since her arrest. When Nara's final memory ended, Kalis asked to address the chamber. My father gave me an enemy, because grief without one was more difficult to survive, she said. I built my life around that gift. I called it justice, because hatred sounded smaller. She looked toward Sela. I do not ask forgiveness. I ask that every record carrying my father's name be opened. The Concord voted to suspend the laws that classified species according to military and economic usefulness. It was not abolition. It was not justice completed in an afternoon. It was the first fracture in a system that had operated for centuries without being forced to explain itself to those it consumed. Ven later told President Hale that some Concord members blamed humanity for the instability. Hale considered that encouraging. Sela addressed the United Nations after the inquiry. The Tessari arcs appeared above every continent, high enough not to threaten cities but close enough to be visible as small points of silver light. For 71 years, she began, your governments concealed our existence. She spoke of the choices that deserved honor and those that deserved scrutiny. She named the American officials who tried to seize Tasari technology. Then she named every human caretaker recorded in the Kansas ledgers. Nurse Eleanor Price, who treated children during the 1957 measles outbreak. Samuel Ortiz, who rebuilt atmospheric pumps using tractor components. Rabbi Isaac Levin and Reverend James Cole, who disagreed about theology while jointly operating a supply route. Lena Park, a teacher who created the first Tasari English mathematics lessons. Margaret Engel, a farmer who hid an escape tunnel beneath her grain silo. Most had died without public recognition. Many ask why we trusted humanity, Sella said. The answer is that we did not trust humanity. Confusion moved through the chamber. We trusted a pilot who carried an injured child away from burning metal. We trusted a nurse who remained beside patients whose bodies frightened her. We trusted farmers who hid our food, teachers who preserved our language, and families who inherited duties they had not created. A civilization is too large to trust all at once. Trust begins with a person, then survives only if another person chooses to carry it. Mara sat beside her mother in the gallery. Her mother held Thomas's wooden box. Your species did not protect us because humans are always kind, Sella continued. No species is. You protected us because cruelty was not the only option available, and because enough people chose the harder one when no reward was promised. She placed Thomas's brass key on the podium. Human greatness is not purity. It is the refusal to treat failure as permission to stop trying. Apken. The Tasari arcs brightened above Earth. For the first time since 1955, they transmitted openly. The first contact recording received a permanent exhibition room at the Smithsonian. The original reel stood behind protective glass beside Thomas Mercer's wooden box. A translated list displayed the names of all 184 Tasari refugees. No names were classified. No empty spaces replaced the dead. Visitors could listen to the entire recording, including the sentence Thomas had spoken after officials ordered him to stop. No, we're not giving them back. Mara resigned from government advisory work and returned to restoring damaged voices. 3 months after the inquiry, Sella invited her aboard the lead arc. The interior contained a reconstruction of the Kansas chamber, as it had appeared in 1973. Children's drawings covered the walls. Human furniture stood beside Tasari memory structures. An Air Force jacket hung over a chair. A man waited beside it. He was thin, elderly, and slightly transparent. Mara stopped in the doorway. Thomas? The figure smiled. Only a recording. Sella preserved several conversations. You caused a great deal of trouble. That sounds like my daughter. Margaret was my grandmother. Thomas's expression changed. She had children? 3. Then 6 grandchildren. He lowered his eyes. I wanted to go home. Why didn't you? Someone had to stay. Other people stayed. Not at first. Mara sat across from him. She had imagined this conversation since finding his letter. In some versions, she thanked him. In others, she accused him of abandoning his family for strangers. Both responses still felt honest. Was it worth missing her life? No. The answer surprised her. Was protecting the Tasari worth it? Yes. How can both be true? Most decisions that matter cost something you had no right to spend. Then why make them? Because refusing also spends something. He looked toward the children's drawings. When Sella's vessel landed, a boy carried his little sister through the wreckage. Both his arms were burned, but he would not put her down. Our doctor told him she was dead. He didn't understand English, so I showed him. Thomas folded his hands. He gave her to me. Then he waited for me to fix what had happened. You couldn't. No, I couldn't restore his family or his world. I could only make sure the people chasing him did not finish the job. Did you hate the Aurelians? For a while. And later? I learned some of their names. The recording smiled sadly. Hating a species is easier when you haven't learned anyone's name. Mara took the wooden box from her bag. Why build this? To hold the key. There was room for more. I hoped Margaret would put something of her own inside. She put your date in it. Thomas closed his eyes. I am sorry. She spent her life believing you died before she was born. I know. She would have made you work for forgiveness. Good. The reconstructed chamber began fading. The preserved conversation was reaching its end. Thomas, the Arks accepted my command when I repeated your answer. No, we're not giving them back. Yes. I didn't create that authorization. Sela did? She said technology could identify a person. She wanted the Arks to identify a decision. His image weakened. History knows what you did now, Mara said. History is a poor substitute for family. I know. Thomas disappeared. Sela joined Mara inside the fading reconstruction. We received another transmission, she said. From the Concord? From Tessari survivors. Mara looked at her. How many? We do not know. Our people scattered beyond mapped space. Some vessels lost contact centuries ago. Where did the message come from? Everywhere. The Ark opened its exterior view. Earth hung beyond the transparent hull, blue and borderless at this distance. Sela played the transmission. Hundreds of Tessari voices overlapped. Old voices, young voices, and minds speaking through bodies adapted to worlds humanity had never seen. The translation appeared slowly. We heard the Witness archive. We know Kestra is remembered. We are still here. The final voice belonged to a child. It asked one question. Is there room? Mara looked down at Earth. At the nations still arguing about the secrecy. At the scientists studying the Arks. At the people visiting Thomas's recording. At the descendants of farmers, nurses, teachers, soldiers, and officials who had inherited a dangerous promise from strangers. Humanity was not prepared. Thomas had been right about readiness. It was a luxury. Mara opened a channel to President Hale. We found the rest of them. How many? We don't know. A pause followed. Then Hale asked, what do they need? A home. Earth could not answer for every Tessari world, or every future generation. It could not promise safety it did not possess. It could not erase the failures hidden inside the 71 years that had brought them to this moment. It could make one decision. President Hale contacted the United Nations. Across the planet, governments began preparing landing zones, medical facilities, translation centers, and public hearings. Not every nation agreed. Not every person welcomed the risk. Enough did. In the Smithsonian, the first contact reel continued turning beneath soft museum lights. Visitors stood beside strangers and listened to a dead signals officer refuse an empire. The recording had been hidden to protect 184 lives. When it was finally heard, it offered shelter to hundreds of thousands more. Not because humanity possessed the strongest fleet. Not because its leaders had predicted every danger. Not because humans were free from fear or selfishness. It endured because, in 1955, frightened people encountered children from another world and decided that the word human described a responsibility larger than a species.